In your opinion, is artificial intelligence something that MSPs can avoid or not? Simple question, but maybe not so.
Yeah, I think that train has already left the station now. I think we are solidly in the world that is moving into an AI space.
Well, it's October, and you know what that means. Time for Halloween and scary things. Hopefully not too scary, but I did want to talk about some things that are related to artificial intelligence that ought to keep most MSPs who have not considered these questions. It should keep them up at night. It should have them, if not worried, then certainly planning a solution for how to deal with these types of issues. And issues, challenges, whatever you want to call them, they are topics that have to be addressed by any managed service provider organization because, as you will soon learn, they're undeniably upon us. They are issues that we cannot extricate ourselves from. And for that reason, I've asked a guest to come on to the MSPZone and help me unpack and deal with the scariness of artificial intelligence and how to address some of these scary things that artificial intelligence is presenting to MSPs and customers alike. So I would like to welcome Mr. Sam Blows from BitWizard. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I do so appreciate you inviting me to be on the show.
No, we're really happy to have you. Before we get started, maybe just a little bit of background on yourself and what you find folks at BitWizard are doing.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm Sam, and I've been here at BitWizards for 10 years now, which is pretty good, I think, working at an MSP. And BitWizards actually started out as a software engineering company that evolved and grew. And as we started developing in the cloud, we needed DevOps, which sort of turned into IT, and that turned into its own managed services line of business to the point now that BitWizards is an MSP. We started out doing some break-fix work that then became, and now we are an MSP. Originally, I'm from England, but I've lived in the States since the 90s now. I've lived here in Florida, so we get to enjoy our October weather as well as Cybersecurity Month, Awareness Month, and scary Halloween month too. But we do manage services for our clients who are all over the country in different industries. We're less focused on the vertical that they're in and more focused on their employee productivity and on their business succeeding has been a big deal for us.
Excellent. Sam, I got to ask, do you still use S in organizations, or have you followed the United States Z?
I use the Z now all over. I say I use it, but I use it and I still call it a Z in my head when I'm using it. So if that helps, it's my little bit of rebellion is I'll type it with it, but I'm going to call it a Z, not a Z.
Just the fact that you use Z, and everyone out there, what is Z? I'm sure that's awesome.
Yep. It's how the letter was meant to be pronounced.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we get into the 5 things that should be keeping MSPs up at night, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but
right,
it's very serious, as we're going to talk about very shortly. But I'd like to start with the idea that, in your opinion, is artificial intelligence something that MSPs can avoid or not? Simple question, but maybe not so.
Yeah, I think that train has already left the station now. I think we are solidly in the world that is moving into an AI space. And I think it is incumbent upon us as MSPs to prepare our clients for this and to prepare ourselves for this seismic shift in how technology is moving.
So number 1 on the 5 things that MSPs need to be worrying about as it relates to artificial intelligence, usage policy. Just how do MSP organizations and the individual employees of the MSP organization deal with AI? It sounds like why start there, but where else would you start other than internally and whether they're using and how they're using AI? What are your thoughts on that, Sam?
Yeah, I think it's such a good question because the truth is, I think your technicians are already using AI. Whether you know it or not, whether your tech team leader knows it or not, your technicians are already using it. And so if you don't have an internal policy with some rules set up whether they're enforced technologically or whether they're just documented rules that people have agreed to, I think it is so important to have some sort of a policy for your company to know what is acceptable versions of usage of AI within your organization, because there are so many different AIs out there and they're owned by different companies, and knowing all of these things is pretty important if you've got technicians taking your client data and your client information and utilizing it with AI.
A follow-up question, if I may. I have come across, even in our own organization, right, our staff who think, boy, AI is really dumb, right? It's not as smart as everyone makes it out to be. And they give some use cases, and I won't name or pick on any particular vendor or tools out there, but they do acknowledge, and these are younger folks who say, it's not really that smart. And then I hear some say, wow, it's helping me do some things. Like I heard someone the other day, not that the similar of a profession of yours in coding and development, who said that, the application development world and profession is going to really dramatically change because of AI.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile the quality of artificial intelligence, good or bad, and what it's going to mean for the future?
That's a good question too, because I do think that is a part of that acceptable use policy as well, is figuring out which of the AIs that are available to us is it okay for us to use, and in which contexts is it okay for us to use those AIs. I think those are the two main things that would need to go into an acceptable use policy for an MSP, would be to say so that all of the technicians and all of the operation staff are very aware of what would be considered a violation or a breach of conduct within the organization, by saying, look, I was just trying to get something done quickly. I knew I needed an answer. I do this at home all the time. It's no big deal. But then you can actually have that conversation about why it is a big deal to put stuff out there.
Yeah. No, so maybe the distinction between a chat GPT or an open box, AI container versus a Copilot, which might be more accurately viewed as a closed box container.
Right. That's exactly right. And so, for instance, here at BitWizards, I can use Copilot for work stuff. That's not an issue. I can even use offline LLMs that are local on my machines if I need to. That's not an issue. However, if I'm going to be using ChatGPT or Cohesity's, any of those other, or Anthropic they've got out there, there's so many of them out there with Claude and Gemini. It's important to know which ones the company has decided are okay. So like I know for our company, that is okay. However, we don't know how much of the information we're putting into any of these LLMs are going to be plowed right back into the training data.
Sam, just listening to you respond to that question, I go back to not that long ago, maybe a decade ago, when we had a similar inflection point in managed services. In fact, all throughout the corporate, global community, dealing with cloud file and backups, right? Putting your data on Dropbox. And it was like a big deal. Like, why would you put it outside the company SharePoint or outside the company, file server? And there was a moment of reconciliation of, no, you're going to do this. You're going to use these approved cloud facilities, but not these unapproved. It kind of sounds the same thing.
Yes, I think it is very, very similar to that. I think that's a great way of doing it. And in fact, I have that conversation a lot less today about convincing people why the cloud is actually a safer location for them in certain contexts, or why this private cloud over here is probably not a great option for them. I don't have those conversations as much anymore, and it feels a little strange that I'm having to turn it around now and say, actually, you have to be careful again about the data that you're putting out there, about whether you can or can't trust it or not. Because in reality, these large corporations like Microsoft and Meta and Google have for years been these enterprises that move very, very slowly. So we can trust that the decisions they're making are going to be some relatively safe. However, now these big enterprises are pivoting like startups. And I don't know if everybody is thinking through all of the things.
I'm reminded of, I think C-3PO told R2-D2 at one point, you can't trust strange, computer systems.
That is very true.
Appropriate.
Yes. Well, and LLMs present a new danger because of that, because it has its own level of intellect to it. It does bring up that question of trust because it can now reason. These AIs can reason and think through things. That is essentially having a very intelligent person who's also very dumb in your network, in your environment.
I like that. A very intelligent person who's also dumb.
Yes.
Not mutually incompatible, by
Correct.
the way.
Yeah.
Number 2, top 5 things that your MSP should be worrying about with AI. Employees, everybody knows the managed services labor market has been extraordinarily tight, particularly amongst security analysts over the last 10 plus years. Predating the cyber pandemic, certainly by many years. I remember going back 10 plus years and hearing MSPs talk about the difficulty of recruiting and retaining, really high quality people. I have heard, you probably have as well, Sam, many accounts of, my gosh, AI is going to take my job. I'm going to be on the breadlines and this is not a good future. But I hear a lot of MSPs saying, no, we need AI to expand and scale because we can't find enough people. Where do you fall? Which side of that do you fall on?
Yeah, I think the phrase that's happening a lot now is people are saying, don't worry, AI is not going to take your job, but somebody using AI will take your job. But I think specifically for MSPs, I think this is a very real fear for technicians because as technicians are using AI and realizing how much of the work it can do for them, it's going to be a very real fear for MSP techs that their jobs are going to become obsolete. But I think that's the wrong line of thinking, and I think it's incumbent upon us as the people running the MSPs to help our employees feel safe and secure. And the reason I think that our employees don't have to worry so much is because the question comes, could an AI fix an incident ticket better or quicker than a technician? And the answer might be yes. However, could an AI teach your end user how to fix it themselves? Yes, it could. But do they want that? And the answer is oftentimes no. People are looking for a human connection.
So that's interesting. So a follow-up question. We went through the same issue during the 70s and more towards the 80s in the automotive manufacturing sector where automation really came in and threatened, what had been decades of very stable high growth opportunity in the car manufacturing business. What do you say about the idea that it's the employee using AI that is going to be the threat to you who are not yet embracing AI?
Yeah,
I think that there's a role to play of the human overseeing what the AI technology is doing, and I don't see that ever going away. I mean, does that make sense? And do you follow that?
Yeah,
or what's
I
your take
do.
on that?
I think that technicians working at MSPs have an advantage and a disadvantage in using AI. The disadvantage is because they're technical. It's easy to see the AI as a program and try to interact with it programmatically. But you have to think of it more as a person and interact with it like a person. But on the other side, the thing that MSP techs have in their favor is that they love to play with things and tinker with things. And almost all of our technicians were the who at their old job was the de facto IT guy, right? Or that it was the de facto IT person, or it was the girl who just couldn't stop taking things apart and putting them back together again until someone got frustrated and gave them a job in IT. And so because of that, if we can encourage our engineers to explore the different AIs, not in an insecure way, of course, not using client data or anything like that, but to use AI as much as they can in their day-to-day lives so that they really get a feel for it and how to interact with it, how to prompt it correctly and get the answers they're looking for, it's going to quell a lot of those fears.
Yeah. And look, I think that's really critical, Sam, because what we don't want is an already tight MSP labor market getting worse because they start thinking, well, I'm going to leave because my future is uncertain. We need more people in the MSP profession, not less. We need a lot more. And I personally don't look at AI as it's going to replace. I look at it as it's going to help you scale and do more with every single individual you have in your MSP organization. AI is just going to make them more powerful, not replace them.
I agree completely. It's the ability to focus on the end users. That's what our end users are looking for. It's why they hired us as their MSPs. And so if I've got a triage person taking an incoming call and trying to figure out, is this a networking issue or is this actually a firewall issue? Instead of worrying about that, I can have them worrying about, how is the person doing? How is the person, what is their frustration level? What is causing the fear that they're expressing to you? Now my person on the phone can have that conversation without having to worry about the minutia of, how should I classify this ticket correctly? And which engineer on the team has the best skill set for this specific incident, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you brought it up in your previous response. So it brings us to number 3, top 5 things that your MSP should be worrying about concerning AI. Data privacy. Whether you call it a strange or foreign AI, computer system, whatever it is, you have to have a policy. And I think you have to have thought about the MSP's operational data and also by extension, the customer, the managed services customers' data and what the MSP is doing to recommend or guide customer adoption of AI systems as it relates to data privacy. What say you, Sam?
Such a good question, because of course we're not even sure what all the risks are with AI, and there's the risks of Skynet happening, right? That some people are still a little worried about, but in reality, most of the danger is going to be in a compliance environment. That we are responsible as the compliant MSPs. We're responsible for maintaining the integrity of our clients' data, and we're responsible for our own as well. And so the problem comes when it becomes so easy to just upload a stack of documents, of contracts to ChatGPT and say, review these for me, and then not think through what other information might be in those contracts that we really should not be releasing to anybody else. Because if I send it to my lawyer to review, I have that confidentiality. I know that the lawyer is not going to then profit off of that some other way. But if I send it to ChatGPT to review, yes, it's a lot cheaper, but I do not have that lawyer privilege going on at all, confidentiality there. I will say also one other big risk is if these LLMs have any level of agency and if they can perform tasks on your behalf, that is another risk factor for any of our clients or any MSP, because then if a bad actor can have the LLM in your environment acting on your behalf, if they can direct it where to go, then that is remote code execution, even though it doesn't look like it.
Sam, I am listening to your answer and I am thinking there has to be an incredible wealth of opportunity in the coming year for MSPs to have conversations about these issues, like just in data privacy 100%. Alone, what you were talking about. So many people, so many organizations, and not small either, like some very good sized organizations, I imagine, have many people who have very incorrect or maybe incomplete ideas or understandings of artificial intelligence, and they need their MSP to be able to guide them on, look, you mentioned compliance, right? You customer are trying to achieve this level of compliance. Your AI usage is going to threaten that compliance, or it's going to put your intellectual property at risk. Those are not insignificant issues, and I think the MSP plays a very central role in that.
I agree. Yeah, as MSPs, we've been ringing the bell about MFA for years, right? We've been ringing the bell about local admin for years. We need to be doing the same thing about the risks that AI is presenting to our clients. They need to know that. But I also think it presents lots of opportunities for us. So I haven't seen anyone doing this yet, but I see lots of articles coming out about be very careful about AI in your environment because it'll be able to uncover things that you didn't know. But I don't see anybody out there actually saying, well, let me tell you what to look for. Because we know if I release an AI on my network just to look at everything, well, it's going to look at everything and it's going to know everything. What should I not allow it to see? That's where the MSP comes in, I think, is they could be able to come in and say, let me look at your environment and tell you that if this employee over here has so much access to your network, but would never go sniffing around on your network, they don't know enough. But that person using an AI, that AI has the knowledge to sniff around.
Again, all this stuff I feel has been dealt with at some level in the past. And here's another example. I'd love your take on this. I remember when there was probably in the mid 2000s, when the technology was just emerging for MSPs to use. I think at the time it was mostly just firewall technology to be able to limit, let's say, certain websites that they didn't want customer employees going to during the middle of the workday because it destroyed productivity or was risky or against security policies, what have you.
Yep.
Do you think that line of use of technology and the role of the MSP in guiding, hey, we're gonna block ChatGPT or certain, and again, I don't hate to name them, but
pick on anyone, but there's
But you get what I'm saying, blocking certain AI systems that are not approved according to the MSP customers list that the MSP helped with.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because within, like, let's say an Office 365 environment, I can set up some compliance policies that says if somebody tries to email out anything with credit card numbers or social security numbers, stop it dead in its tracks. But that gets a lot harder when it's not even about the emails coming in and out. It's about what websites our end users are going to, or even our own technicians are going to, and then exfiltrating the data that way. It is, it's definitely a scary thing because of that, but also because it's going to give people the power by having an AI at their disposal. It's going to make things so much easier, and that convenience factor. And we know that the opposite of security is always convenience. It's not insecurity. It's always the convenient thing is where we lose our security, and AI is making things so convenient. There's a lot of risk there with it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The fourth item of 5 things that your MSP ought to be worrying about concerning artificial intelligence. It is the, not sure how to phrase this, but it's the accuracy of what the AI system is giving you. And it gets back to one of my team members who said, this is some inaccurate stuff. In fact, I'm seeing now a lot of AI warnings of this may not be accurate. Please go and check. What about this idea that have we placed too much faith in the AI system and that we actually have to exercise some actual human, gray matter bandwidth and CPU usage to look at this work and double check it and make sure it's actually right?
Well, I think the word of the year from Merriam-Webster's dictionary was hallucination this year, because it's what they call it when an AI just makes stuff up. They call it hallucinating. And I had somebody ask me, why do LLMs, why do AIs, large language models and artificial intelligence, why do they make stuff up? Why do they hallucinate? And as I thought about it, I said, the real answer is, why don't they hallucinate all the time? It's actually kind of a mystery as to how we keep getting correct information out of them. But if you think about it from that perspective, that it is literally just trying to figure out what is the next appropriate word to put in the sentence, it gets a little easier to not trust it quite as much. As well, we shouldn't. Now, I think if you're a lawyer, sure, you need to be very careful about this because it could tell you about some precedent that actually doesn't exist. And we think, well, as MSPs, we're immune from that. We don't really have to worry about factual information. But where it affects us as MSPs is when we have it doing any kind of an action on our behalf. We're now trusting it to do exactly what we thought we had communicated to it to do, but it may have gotten completely the wrong idea about it. And so there's definitely some risk in there that it could lie to us very easily. And we can't read from a facial expression if Claude is lying the way I can if somebody sitting in front of me might be able to.
But again, Sam, it seems to me to reinforce this idea that the role of the human MSP staff member and the MSP organization at large, does have a very large role to play in managing and directing and advising on the use of artificial intelligence internally and externally with customers.
Absolutely. I think with our customers, with our clients, it is incumbent upon us to educate them and let them understand how it works and where the risks come in. But internally for ourselves as a company, it's important for us to make sure that the information we're getting out of it is factual. In fact, I think one of the best ways to look at how an AI can be used in your MSP is to think not what services or what options can it replace, but what can it do to enhance? How can it make my technicians better? So if I've got a tech who is terrible at putting his timesheet in, I don't know if anyone else has ever had that. But how could an AI help my tech get his or her timesheet in better, right? That's a better way of doing it rather than saying, how could I have an AI do that for them? And so that applies across the board. So I don't have to worry about hallucination as much if I'm thinking, how can I have it make me better at what I do rather than how can I just have it do what I do for me? It's a different way of thinking.
I think that's a great expression of at least the near future of artificial intelligence in the managed services environment, which somewhat brings us to the fifth thing that MSPs ought to be worried about concerning AI, and that is not engaging at all. Fear of missing out, FOMO, or whatever you want to call it. Now, I have heard, I am aware of MSPs who are absolutely not exposing artificial intelligence systems to customers, meaning that they're keeping it close to the vest and they're using it internally. They're certainly using it with their vendors, the MSP vendors, but they are saying they're having a wait and see approach to exposure to a managed services customer. But even then, they're having to deal with AI. There is a real legitimate fear of just not being engaged on this matter. Is there?
Yes, I think so. I think this train is moving, and if we're not jumping on now, it's going to leave us behind. I really feel like this is a very big shift in the same way that, like, when the internet happened, at first we didn't really realize just how big of a deal it is to network a couple of computers across the country until now our lives are on the internet. And when we have an outage, we just sit around staring at each other because what do you do if you're not online anymore? I think this is going to be the same with these AIs. And I think if an MSP is saying, well, you know what, let's just hold back and see how this thing plays out, I think they may hold back a little too far because of the advantage that is gained by utilizing AIs within the MSP space.
Yeah, definitely. So basically the takeaway is if you are not engaged and thinking about AI, that number one has to be settled immediately. Would you say that's step number one?
Yes. I spoke with an MSP owner just not too long ago, and he told me that he's just telling his clients that AI is a fad. It's just a big database. It's going to have the same problems that everybody else has. And so we had a little bit of a sit-down talk to say, actually, it's not just a big database. It's a neural network. It was never programmed. It learned and was trained. These are very different paradigms. And if you're not going to have the conversation with your clients about it, somebody else will. And if you don't take care of your clients, there's plenty of other people out there ready to take care of your clients for you. And you don't know that they're going to be using the AIs as ethically as you would.
Yeah. But I think it's more the relevancy that if the MSP has a customer and the customer says, I have a need or a question around AI, or the MSP just has an opportunity but fails to take advantage of it and have a conversation that says, you're not really using artificial intelligence in the right way that's going to be helpful for your business, and they abdicate that role, I think that that's very damaging to them individually as an MSP, but also for the larger profession. It's not a matter that MSPs can be silent on.
Absolutely. If you call yourself a VCIO, which might be going out of favor a little bit now as a term, but it's still that same role, right? Is that we are becoming a trusted advisor. The reason that people are engaging with an MSP is because they don't want to have to learn and research all of this stuff. It is on us to be that North Star for them to know, is it okay to go in this direction, or should we be pivoting a different direction? If you're servicing a bank, then their regulations and their governance is going to be very different than a mom and pop shop or a tree trimming service. And so being able to adapt that conversation to your clients as an MSP, I think, is your responsibility. But the good news is you can have an AI help you figure it out.
I knew you were going to say that at some point. All right. To summarize all of this, once an MSP listening to this podcast, listening to you, Sam, talk about these kind of 5 elements, and they're really, fundamental elements, and we'll post them in the show notes when this gets, live. The MSP then doesn't need to fear artificial intelligence. They can actually start to have very affirmative ideas and guidance for their customers and for their internal staff about how AI is going to be used, how it's not going to be used, and how it's going to factor into just everyday advisory opinions that the MSP has. I think that's a relatively positive thing about viewing AI once they've accomplished these kind of more scary
Yes.
things.
Yes, I think once we get these 5 ghosts or ghouls out of the way, right? Once we can be sure that we know that our employees know what's okay to do and not okay to do with an AI, once they know that the human aspect of their jobs is what makes them so valuable, and once they understand once you know that you've got some understanding about where the data lives and where it should not live and what's risky with it, and once everybody's aware that it's not always going to tell the truth, then yes, I think absolutely. Then the only fear left is by getting left behind and not embracing it fast enough.
Maybe AI is only as good as the MSP that's monitoring and managing it.
I think so very much. I think like any other technology, we should be blazing the trail and showing the way.
Yeah, I hear, Sam. I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. And for those of you out there who are listening to this, definitely take Sam's words to heart and start to develop a checklist to get through your artificial intelligence
journey,
fears, whatever, but get through them. And once you get through them, it's going to look much brighter future, and the opportunities, I assure you, will be there aplenty.
Yes, absolutely. And this space, I think, is only going to grow, right?
I agree with that 100%, Sam. I think we've just scratched the surface of artificial intelligence's impact on the managed services market. We're going to see some pretty exciting, and I'm sure a few scary moments, to be sure, but it'll be mostly good, I'm sure.
I agree.
Okay, Sam Blows from Fit Wizards.
Yeah.
I hope you guys are staying safe. I know you guys got hit by 2 storms. So
yes.
How are your customers doing?
We're doing okay, and our clients are okay. My son just went down to Tampa to help out with relief efforts down there with his job. And so we're all very blessed right now that we're dry. And I do appreciate everyone's kind thoughts and messages they've sent to us.
Well, continue to stay safe, continue to do a great job, and hopefully come back to the MSP Zone in the future, and love to talk to you about many other less scary things, in the future.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor.
Take care.